Hello, everybody. It's Andrea. This is actually my fourth attempt at starting this podcast because I've done it wrong the first three times, which is why I'm trying a new format, which is simpler and shorter. I am my own producer and engineer, and I'm pretty lousy at both jobs. I'm working on it, getting better, pretty much not great. I'm going to swing right into the podcast in an effort to keep it shorter. First issue, if you're looking at the show, is a war with no casualties. This is one of the ludicrous ideas that the left and the isolationists have come up with, which is because we live in an age of modern warfare, there should be no casualties whatsoever. It should be such a clean war that no one on our side gets hurt. And that is ridiculous. It's just the same way having air dominance over Iran doesn't mean that Iran won't get off lucky shots. The nature of war is that no matter how well you do, the enemy has some say in the war. I mean, the only thing that stopped that was dropping a nuclear bomb. And contrary to what Tucker Carlson says, no, Donald Trump is not going to drop a nuclear bomb on Iran. He's not going to kill all of the Persian people. I prefer to call them Persian, not Iranian, because Iran is a nation ruled over by the mullahs and the IRGC, and the people mostly are Persians who have been victims of this leadership for a long time. So the Persian people are I don't think at this point, certainly not our enemies. But anyway, there's this whole notion of a war without casualties, and this is impossible. And one of the things I was thinking of was a tweet I saw the other day, which I cannot locate, otherwise I would show it to you, which said that more people have died as homicide victims in Chicago since the war started than Americans have died during the war, because there were 6 troops who were killed when an Iranian weapon successfully got through early in the war, and then there was the training or the supply accident over Iraq. By any standards, this is an extraordinarily clean war. And incidentally, so far, 54 people have been murdered in Chicago in 2026. And you don't hear any of the anti-war people crying about them. The other thing about a war without casualties is if war were so perfectly clean that you could not get any casualties, I'm not sure you could get any soldiers. One of the things about young men is that they need to pit themselves against something. They need to prove to themselves that they are manly men. They need to test themselves. They need to strive. My theory is, as we've made society safer and safer, it's one of the reasons more and more young men are involved in extreme sports, cliff skiing and insane snowboarding and skiing and skydiving. Young men seem to have an atavistic lizard brain need to pit themselves against the world. And it's truly infantilizing them to say, we're going to put you in a military and train you like crazy and guarantee that you will never be hurt. Now, I understand that every wife and mother and husband and child wishes that their loved one would not be hurt. I so totally get that. That's not how the real world operates. And the fact is, men do dangerous things. It's dangerous to be a taxi driver. It's dangerous to be a construction worker. It's dangerous to be a lineman, a police officer, a firefighter. There are dangerous jobs in the world. And right now, Trump and Pete Hegseth have created a military, and I will say the whole military has created itself, that is the least dangerous for Americans' military that has ever happened. So, a war without casualties, it's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. We have achieved an insanely low number of casualties, and to say otherwise is just to be faking it or to be really, really stupid. Checking the clock. My timer will go off soon because my dog needs his insulin, and so dinner is on the clock, and if the timer goes off while I'm doing this podcast, he will go absolutely crazy and it will be very ugly. My next topic, it shows an image of an American man, a Japanese man, and an Arab man, and it arose from a conversation we were having in the car about honor, and I forget how it came up, but I said that honor is very, very different across different cultures. In America, when we talk about an honorable person, we talk about someone who has a personal code of honor. So in the image, I show the American man looking embarrassed, and his sign says, "I'm really sorry." When we fail in our own code of honor, we are ashamed. We might try to, I hope, we try to fix the problem. We try not to do it again. We raise our children to be honorable. It's a way of behaving that's moral and decent, thoughtful of others, certainly honest, but it is very personal. In Japan, honor or face is very personal too, but it is when you have failed the institutions, when you have failed others. And in the old days, you used to commit harakiri. You take the knife and do a ritual seppuku evisceration of yourself to show your deep shame. Nowadays, they quit. So in America, you go on TV and you say, "I'm so embarrassed," but you don't quit your job. You don't give up your gig. You just wait for forgiveness. I believe in remorse, repentance, true repentance and redemption. A good groveling apology and changing your ways tends to work in America. But in Japan, quit your job, kill yourself, whatever. The Muslim world, which is an honor society, that's what it's called, it's an honor culture, is very different. It's a completely externalized honor culture. It's about someone else bringing shame on you, a wife or a child. And what you do is you kill them. You exterminate the one who brought shame on you. It is the ultimate narcissism. It's an absolute antithesis of what we in the West understand honor to be. It's what the antithesis of what the Japanese understand honor to be. It is, you embarrassed me, I'm going to kill you. Now my honor is restored. I don't quite see how these cultures can exist simultaneously in the same space. To me, they're very much matter and antimatter. Moving right along, the dog is fed, all is peaceful. He is a Chihuahua mutt with a basso profundo bark and a lot of attitude. He may be old and sick, but he knows who he is. Next topic I wanted to discuss is the innovation of drone warfare. It's very clear that drones are a major factor in this war, just as they have been in the Ukraine-Russia war. They're a whole new type of warfare. They're mobile, cheap, disposable, very effective. Someone sent me an essay by someone named Jay Martin called "The Mongols, Drones, and the Future of Warfare." I'll include the link in the American Thinker post and in the descriptions that come with the video podcast. It's an interesting essay. It's a long essay, so I'm not going to describe it in detail, and I'm not addressing every point he makes. He opens, though, with history. I always like history. And he discusses how the Mongols, in less than 70 years, built the largest land empire in human history. No single kingdom has controlled a larger swath of land than the Mongols. And they destroyed multiple old, rich, and powerful societies, including China, which was already tens of millions of people. And they did it with a single military innovation, the stirrup. With the stirrup, they were able to remain on horseback, stabilize themselves, and shoot arrows while charging. It was that era's nuclear weapon. And he likens the drones to the nuclear weapons of that time. I was discussing this with a friend, and we started thinking, is it really quite the same? And that was an interesting concept to me because I'm not sure it's the same, because the IRGC and Basij, they can hang on. They are fanatic, not just because of their ideology, but for another reason. And it gets to the landscape in which they are operating. They will fall back and become a guerrilla group fighting with drones. I can see that happening. But they will not be in friendly conquered territory. So they will not be in territory that a colonial enemy or a genocidal enemy has conquered, where the people will come to their aid. The Persian people, some are fanatics, but it seems as if the greatest number of Persian people absolutely hate the regime under which they've been operating. They hate a regime that kills over 30,000 people in a matter of weeks for speaking out. They hate a regime that has systematically raped women in jail to deprive them of paradise after they're executed. They hate a regime that forces women to go around covered and that abuses them if for some reason their covering slips off in public. If the IRGC and the Basij lose the big war and are unable to sustain a war with conventional weapons, which I think is the case, notwithstanding what my son, who relies on the New York Times and leftist outlets, tells me, if they lose the conventional warfare, yes, they probably will go to guerrilla warfare. It is very, very hard to fight a guerrilla warfare when the population is against you. And it's more than that. My friend thinks, and I agree, that this is not just a population that will not help out the IRGC and the Basij. This is a population that, given the chance, will rip them limb from limb. And remember how I said at the beginning of this little riff that I did not think that they would willingly surrender? My friend and I are agreed that one of the reasons they will not willingly surrender is because the moment they lay down their arms, while the U.S. is likely to accept a surrender and not go into some bloodthirsty revenge, it remains to be seen whether the Persian people will be so forbearing. They have suffered under the IRGC and the Basij for generations, and they might want some bloody revenge. So I believe there's a video circulating of some Iranian official saying that the population is out to get them. They can't surrender, but they also are unlikely to be able to maintain a sustained guerrilla warfare amongst a hostile population. It's another reason I'm sure that Trump and Hegseth's military have taken this into account. It's another reason I think that we're fundamentally winning. Going back to the J. Martin essay, he talks about something that is really much more concerning, which is the fact that just as the fight promoter, Don King, would often represent both of the boxers in a single fight, so he couldn't lose, but he had also no interest in protecting either of his fighters from each other. We're much more dependent on China than anyone wants to acknowledge when it comes to our military capabilities. Because even though we may ultimately assemble them in the U.S., the parts may come from China, including the computer parts. So even though China is our geopolitical enemy and China is reliant on Iran for its oil, we are reliant on China for our weapons systems. Meanwhile, China is also being allowed through the strait, and it is continuously supplying the Iranian military with weapons, which is probably where their current supply of weapons is coming from. They claim to have stores that have not been destroyed, and I believe that, but if they're constantly getting secret shipments from the Chinese, well, that's got to help. It's a problem. It's also, the fact is, everything from China is garbage. I knew a man who worked on rebuilding the span of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge that was destroyed by the Loma Prieta earthquake, a project that took 25 years or something to do. It was utterly outrageous because it was always seismically unsound and there was always the likelihood of another earthquake. he took us on sort of a little tour of the construction area near the bridge. It was pretty interesting. And what he said is that originally they were getting the metal plates. We have no, America has lost all its steel manufacturing capacity. That's one of the things we gave away, that we gave to other countries. Originally, the steel plates for the project came from Japan, and he said they were absolutely fantastic. The steel was rock solid. It had no flaws, no cracks. And to the extent that it was all pre-drilled, every hole was in exact, my dog's snorting in the background, every hole was in exactly the right place. So it was perfect. But because of the inevitable cost overruns, I'm sure you saw these or heard about the 60 Minutes spot on California's high-speed rail, which has gone years over and millions of dollars over and not a single inch of track laid. And in any event, it was always going to be a train to nowhere from one point in the Central Valley to another. It was meant to serve San Francisco to LA corridor, came to nothing. Anyway, the Bay Bridge was the same thing, huge cost overruns. I actually was friends with the guy who finally brought it to heel, and he was not loved for doing that. A lot of people lost money from his finally stopping that boondoggle. But what the other man I knew who worked on the bridge said is, when it got too expensive, they switched to getting metal plates from China. And he said something like 25% of them were defective. Either the metal was weak or cracked or deformed, or the pre-drilled holes didn't line up. It was complete garbage. And I've said for a long time that the one thing that makes me less worried about China's military capacity, and we've seen that come true in both Venezuela and Iran, is that everything China builds is crap. I don't know what pre-communist China was like in terms of quality output and pride of craftsmanship, but communism killed that. Chinese factory workers don't care about the quality, and factory owners, they don't care about the quality of their project. The military is rife with corruption, which may explain why Xi Jinping is doing all sorts of purges in the military and talking about graft and corruption. Yeah, because they sell off parts, they pillage things, they've been selling oil out, so there are all sorts of fuel tanks on military bases that apparently have no oil. I'm hoping that to the extent Chinese garbage comes to America and gets integrated into our military materiel, that at least we have some control over it and do quality inspection before any of it gets incorporated. I'd also like to think, to the extent that we have any computers, chips and parts and whatever's coming from China, that someone is checking them to make sure they can't be hacked by the Chinese. I don't know if that's possible. So Jay Martin, I'll include a link. It's a really interesting essay. I'm not sure I agree with it in all ways. I'm a little more optimistic than he is. On to the next topic, which is the horseshoe right and left. What we hear a lot about is that we're now getting the coming together of left and right. Well, actually, in a lot of things, the extreme ends of left and right. Ben Shapiro calls this the horseshoe theory, where they meet up. And one of the things he did, he was on Peter Robinson. I wrote about this at American Thinker. And today is Tuesday, April 7th. This will go up on Wednesday, April 8th. I wrote it on April 7th about podcasts by Victor Davis Hanson and Ben Shapiro that were so interesting, I wanted to share them with you. And what Ben Shapiro was talking about is that a lot of the real ugliness that's coming up on the right is from young men who are actually basically leftists or nihilists in a leftist mode, but they feel left behind, pardon the pun of left behind. What the leftists have done has failed them. They've created a society that does not work. So they've become quote unquote Republicans under the rubric of not left. But they share the same values and they share the same desire to destroy the system. And that gets me to my concept about the different strains of isolationism. My little image, if you're watching the video, is Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene Bernie Sanders and AOC, and they're all looking kind of grim, and the speech bubble says, "We just don't want the U.S. involved in foreign wars." That has been bringing them together. And they speak about protecting the U.S., bloodless war, any war with any casualties, going back to my first point, bad. And we're fighting this war for Israel. No, Trump has been saying exactly what he's doing since 1980, 1983, 1987, 1990s, 2015. Trump has been absolutely consistent that Iran, which has declared itself to be America's mortal enemy, cannot be allowed to go nuclear. Trump's been absolutely explicit for decades. But Israel, I don't think there are such things as allies anymore. Europe is not an ally. Europe is very hostile to America. It wants America to be its sugar daddy and give it stuff and fight its wars for it, including defending Ukraine, which is not a NATO nation. We didn't have to do that. We did it because Ukraine abuts NATO nations, and the Europeans got panicky, but the Europeans have done very little financially in their own defense. So we have rushed off to defend Europe since World War I, and I will agree that there were European troops involved in the wars immediately after 9/11. But for the most part, and especially since those wars, Europeans have been lousy allies. They're take, and no give. They don't give to NATO, they don't give to the UN. It's all up to America, and that is changing. And right now, sitting here, I can't remember why I mentioned Europe. Oh, I was talking just about Trump being, there are no allies. But there are strategic alliances, and Israel is a strategic ally with the U.S. Does that mean a forever ally? No. Countries have different interests, different goals, different cultures. But for now, Israel and America have exactly the same goal, which is to erase Iran's nuclear and other aggressive capabilities. Certainly, Israel is on the very front line because it's within easy range of anything Iran does and of Iran's proxies. But Iran has been consistently at war with the U.S. It's acted through proxies. It's acted directly. It's killed American troops across the world. It's never made any secret about its ultimate goal of destroying the U.S. So, but a lot of the isolationism is driven by hostility to Israel, which is what characterizes all four of the people in my image. But even though they're all isolationists, even though they're all hostile to Israel and are paranoid about Israel, on the left and the right, isolationism is very different. True isolationists on the right, not opportunists and grifters, but true isolationists just want to be left alone. That's impossible. When you're the world's largest, most powerful nation, you're going to be attacked by the jackals and hyenas if they perceive any weakness. It doesn't matter. You can either do the Teddy Roosevelt thing of speak softly and carry a big stick, whatever you do, but you simply cannot say, go away and leave me alone. If you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. That's not how it works with the world's jackals and hyenas. It's not how it works with the Irans and Chinas and former Soviet Union and current Russia, which may not attack us directly, but will use proxies and covert attacks and cyber attacks and social media manipulation. So the true American isolationists are simply in denial, naively so. The Marxists have a different goal. They don't want an intact America left alone. They want America to be destroyed. They dream of one world government, and America keeps standing in the way with its stubborn traditions of liberty and independence, very antithetical to the European tradition of totalitarianism. Remember, when Europe talks about left or right, it's not talking about total control versus individual liberty. It is talking about total control by one side versus total control by the other side. The only nation in that conglomerate that had somewhat different values was Britain, from which we got our ideas of individual liberty. But Britain, over the years, perhaps through its being in the EU, or because the left took over, or because Islam is taking over, Europe no longer has any liberty tradition at all. It's disarmed, free speech is over, religious liberty is over. The UK is Europe, so calling them Europe is pretty much the same thing. The only thing that stands in the way of being eaten by the jackals or sucked into some hostile to America one world government is a robust, patriotic America, one that is proud of itself and that is proud of its traditions and values, and that is willing to defend itself and is willing to work closely with those nations that share its values and share its enemies. Currently, that nation is Israel. Portugal and Greece, as Victor Davis Hanson pointed out, also stepped forward to help out America in the current fight. And there is nothing wrong with strong strategic alliances of people with similar values or at least similar goals and enemies. One of the things that has really broken the world is that Obama and Biden, both of whom were leftists, broke the Pax America contract, which is a robust America when it defends itself, defends others. The way I think of it is whenever I'm on an airplane and they give the spiel about what you need to do in case of a crash, bracing yourself, listening to things, but they say if the oxygen mask drops down, if you're traveling with someone who, for whatever reason, whether youth or illness, is unable to put the mask on, you must always put the mask on yourself first and then assist the person with you. This is completely logical. If you are disabled, you can't help the other person. The only way the Pax Americana works is if a strong America believes in itself, defends its interests, and works with other countries with like values to do the same. And the one thing I want to point out, I said that all these neo-isolationists, what they also are is anti-Semites. To the extent that America is partnering with Israel, they're using anti-Semitism to attack America's role. But the other thing that's worth pointing out is that when all of them talk about the horrors of the Persian people dying and how evil it is for Trump to do this and how awful this is, and civilians, remember that all of them, Tucker is pro-Putin, and he has been completely copacetic with the mass deaths of the Ukrainian people. So the leftists have been all in for the war in Ukraine and have never been willing in any way to yield on any point to save the lives of the Ukrainian people. Their goal, all of their goals, is to weaken America, whether they realize it like true isolationists, not grifters like Tucker or Marjorie Taylor Greene, or whether they're Marxists. Their goal is to weaken America. I don't want that to happen. I have children, I will have grandchildren, and I want them to live in a safe, strong America, because a safe, strong America is a great place to grow up, and it's also a great place for the rest of the world. And let me slide my cursor over. I'm done. Thank you so much for listening. I kept it under 30 minutes. I hope you're enjoying a wonderful week, and I will be back. That's both a promise and a threat.